Welcome to Stone Cold, Chapter 2. The next morning, Snow slowly woke up. Her head was pounding. Her tongue felt swollen and made of cotton wool, and her entire body ached. Possibly a migraine was setting in, or worse, a case of the flu. All she knew was that she felt as if there was sand scratching her eyes from behind her eyelids, and she couldn't remember when last she woke up feeling so horrible.
I feel awful.
She mumbled out loud, knowing that Shadow was the only one there with her.
I feel like the waking dead.
She lay in bed for a while with her eyes closed. She knew she had to get up and start her day, and a part of her really wished someone would invent a coffee delivery robot. But the world is too cruel for that. She would have to get up and make her way to the kitchen all by herself to attempt the menial task of making that first cup of the morning. She opened her eyes and found herself wondering if Shadow could be trained to make and deliver her morning coffee. Her mouth was dry and her lips felt cracked. If she hadn't known any better, she would have sworn she had been out partying the night before. She rubbed her temples. She must have fallen asleep and had quite an early night. She couldn't quite remember going to bed. Had she been so exhausted the previous day? She needed coffee to help clear the fog away. She looked for her sleeping greyhound. Shadow hated waking up as much as she did, but he wasn't laying on the bottom of the queen-size bed as he usually did.
Shadow.
She called out and heard a whimper come from the bathroom and a scratch at the door. Somehow the silly dog must have knocked the door shut and locked himself in. She grabbed a pair of rectangular framed spectacles next to her bed and put them on, helping to bring the room and the day into focus. After a little more effort, she made her way to the bathroom door, letting the rather upset dog out. He pushed himself tightly up against her, and she rubbed his head and ears. He appeared to be rather traumatized about having been separated from her and probably spending a good chunk of the night sleeping on the bathroom floor rather than on the comfortable bed. They made their way to the kitchen and Snow switched on the coffee machine. It hummed into action and began to make a pot of delicious warm liquid. She felt grateful to be living alone. She just could not deal with people before at least one cup of strong black coffee. Finally, the filter coffee was done and she poured herself a mug and made her way back to the bedroom. She had a small 2-bedroomed house in a quaint neighborhood of Buttonhole Bay. It was small enough for her to not have to spend too much time keeping it neat and tidy, but big enough with a garden around it so that she wouldn't have to deal too much with her neighbors. She loved the sanctity of her little home. It came with a small office attached to the side of the house. Being able to work from home was one of her greatest joys. Her biggest clients were the Buttonhole Bay police, and she only really had to leave if she was required to help with a crime scene examination, though usually gruesome photos and files on the various crimes were sent to her, and she managed to work just fine with these. Detective Noakes had once commented how she had a dangerous understanding of a murderer's inner thoughts. Who knows, perhaps she did. She climbed back into bed under her sky blue comforter. Shadow joined her and immediately lay across the bottom, mooning at her for moving so much when she tugged at the blanket. Such a grumpy dog. He truly is her spirit animal, though this morning he seemed particularly needy and grumpy. She took a big sip of delicious hot coffee and then reached for the stack of photos beside the bed. Theresa May had said she could keep the gruesome images until their next meeting to see if it would help her to solve the mystery of her dead lover. It took her a moment and another big sip of coffee, but then the realization of what she was looking at began to dawn on her. She stared at the photos. Her heart began to thump in her chest, and she quickly put down her coffee mug as her hands began to shake. She looked closely at the photographs again. The hair on the back of her neck stood up, and she could feel the blood drain from her face. She looked at Shadow, who was suddenly more alert and staring back at her.
You useless dog.
She finally managed to say. He gave her a cheeky little whine in reply, She looked back at the photographs in her shaking hands. These weren't the photos from Theresa May. These were photos of Theresa May, images of her freshly mutilated body, made to look similar to the photographs she had seen just the day before at the coffee shop. Someone must have broken into her home in the middle of the night and swapped these photos for the ones she already had. Not only that, she stared down at the photo on top of the pile, but they had done it twice. The image contained the dismembered torso of Miss May. Plunged into the torso was one of Snow's brand new blue pointed-toe stilettos.
That's just plain evil.
She said aloud, wondering who would do such a malicious thing to a beautiful pair of brand new shoes. Suddenly feeling very awake, she rushed through the house, checking all windows and doors. No sign of forced entry, or any entry for that matter. She ran her hands through her short, mousy hair, her pixie style not yet having been tamed for the day. She returned back to her room and flung open her closet door, and there sat just one blue stiletto, its partner involved in a crime at an unknown location. Slowly, she sat back down on her bed, trying to make some kind of sense of everything. She picked up her mug of coffee, its contents still hot, and took a sip. When she was done, she let Shadow outside so that he could go about doing the business of his morning business, while she went to the bathroom to immerse herself in a hot shower. Perhaps a part of her was hoping the hot shower would wash away her new reality and return everything back the way it was before she went to bed. Wearing a towel around her, she double-checked the photos next to her bed again. Nope. They were definitely images of various body parts and the impaled head of Theresa May. She looked at the image of the shoe, lodged into the torso again, and sighed. What shoes would she wear today? She let Shadow back in from his morning activities, and he ran to the room and lay on the bed, watching her as she got dressed. The murder of someone she barely knew was going to interrupt their morning routine as little as possible. It seemed unfair that it should. She put on a pair of gray, straight-legged slacks with a crisp white shirt, opening the closet to look at her shoes. She felt sad and somewhat frustrated when she looked at the lonely blue stiletto once again. Being careful not to touch it or interrupt it from its place, she reached in and grabbed a pair of black slip-ons. It seemed like a good day to be wearing flats. Who knew where the day would take her? Shadow followed her as she made her way back to the kitchen, refilling her coffee mug and serving him a bowl of kibble. She made herself a slice of seed toast and stood in the kitchen eating it, staring out the window, thinking about how all her doors were still locked, all the windows closed. So how had somebody managed to creep into her home twice in one night? After breakfast, she put on Shadow's black harness with large white letters that read, "Service dog, don't touch."
Well, boy, I think we're definitely going to be needing this today.
She rubbed his head, took a deep breath, and made her way out her still locked front door and through to the door of her office just a few steps away. As she opened the door, she heard the continuous beeping that reassured her that the office alarm had still been set. She quickly punched in her code to stop the noise and ushered Shadow inside. The room was large. It must have been a single-car garage before it had been converted into a home office. She had painted the walls white and had only a few pieces of furniture, her desk, 2 chairs, and a whiteboard. She needed the space as clear and open as possible. She just couldn't think properly if there was mess and clutter around her. She sat at her desk and stared out the large window that showed the street that went past her home. A part of her expected her 9 a.m. appointment, Miss Theresa May, to still show up instead of being a dismembered body somewhere. She looked at the phone that sat on her desk. It was time to make the call. She dialed in the number and waited for it to be answered.
Oh yes, hello, please, can I speak to Detective Noakes? It's urgent.
Another pause as she was transferred to the detective's line.
Good morning, Detective. It's Snow. Dr. Hiver, could you come over? I'm afraid there's been a murder.
There was a few seconds of silence on the other end of the line, which ended when Detective Noakes responded.
Oh boy, I
guess I knew this day would come.
She could hear her moving around on the other side of the phone.
Just hang tight, Doc. I'll be right over.
True to her word, less than 15 minutes later, 2 cars pulled up in front of her home. Detective Noakes climbed out of an unmarked Land Cruiser, while the 2 policemen from a marked patrol car followed her.
Well, Shadow, this is it. I fear our lives and home may never be the same again.
She said at the curious greyhound who stood staring out the window. Snow watched the 3 of them walk up the driveway and got up to greet them at the entrance to her office.
Detective Noakes, thank you for coming so quickly.
No problem, Doc. It's all part of the job description.
She paused for a while, taking off her stereotypical aviator sunglasses, obviously for effect.
Where's the body?
I don't know.
Snow replied honestly.
But there's been a murder.
Noakes asked.
Yes.
They stood silent for a moment.
Do you know who was murdered?
Noakes asked, clearly not sure of what to make of the situation.
Yes.
Snow responded. There was a moment of silence again. Detective Noakes looked at Snow and took in a deep breath. It was already turning out to be a hot day, and beads of sweat were starting to form on her brow as she stood out in the sun. She was clearly trying to find the right question to ask in order to get some answers.
Well, Dr. Hiver, would you like to tell me what you know?
Yes.
She said.
Shall we go into my office?
Snow gestured towards the open door behind her with shadows standing in its entrance. Noakes listened patiently as Snow shared the series of events that had transgressed since they last saw each other at the previous day's bridal massacre. She occasionally nodded to show she was still listening to what Snow was saying.
And that was when I came into my office and called you.
She finally finished.
Dr. Hiver, that's quite a story.
She said, looking around her office.
We are going to have to do a once-over through your home, just to double-check everything. I will have to call CSI and they will probably spend a good few hours, if not the rest of the day, going through everything.
Not looking forward to having her home invaded and turned into a crime scene, she took a deep breath and held it for a moment.
I understand. You have my permission to enter.
She said, reluctantly handing over her house keys, hoping there wouldn't be too much of a mess to clean up once everything had been gone through. The idea that people were soon to be in her home, invading every corner of it, was almost too much to bear. She tried her best to not think about it.
I will need you.
Noakes paused, looking at Shadow.
And your dog? To go down to the station with these 2 nice officers to make an official statement?
She said, looking at the 2 uniformed men standing at the entrance to her office.
Of course.
Snow said, a little relieved that she would not have to see her home swarming with people, but also anxious at the thought of sitting at the back of a police vehicle in the same space where filthy criminals would normally sit. She felt a shiver go through her body. She would definitely soak in a long hot shower tonight. Thank you so much for listening to this chapter of Stone Cold. Remember to subscribe and hit the bell icon to not miss a single episode of the Needle and Notion Mysteries podcast.